Some Christina though, right?
Yeah.
Like bio. A most unusual gin, Hendrix. 12 at Tash.
5, 4.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Zagreb Digital Nomad Week. We are on day 4 with a tax and finance theme today, and we are at Swanky Monkey Garden in Zagreb. We love this place. We love the mojitos. This is a paper straw. We love that even more. And we love that happy hour is on at 5 o'clock tonight too. So I think we might start early here. We have quite a crowd here at Swanky, and we have a special guest. So to my left, which is probably your right, Christina Grbavac from KPMG, and to my right, your left, Michael Freer, who's hosting tonight, and he'll introduce today's session. Enjoy.
Thank you, Tanya. Let me just flip this on so you can hear me well. Yes, so as Tanya says, here in Swanky Monkey, we've got a monkey somewhere, if you can see it. And today we have a very special session with our favorite tax advisor from KPMG, Christina Grbavac. She's been with us for the last 2 Digital Nomad conferences now. Mm-hmm. And today we're here in her hometown to hear about tax and finance. So over to you, Christina. You have a presentation for us today.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you also for inviting me to also be with you on tax matters for 3rd time now. Tax matters are actually something that people find as something that necessary, something they have to deal with. But I will try to make it more funny, for all of you. And I was thinking, how to start today's presentation and how to show to you what Croatia has done for digital nomads. So I was thinking maybe to start with 2 quotes. One is actually showing how is tax generally functioning in the world and saying the best things in life are free, but sooner or later the government will find a way to tax them. So this is generally applicable. But then when you consider what Croatia has done for digital nomads, and I'll try to show it during today's presentation, is the quote which says, the best things in life are tax-free. So I'll show you why Croatia has done something good for you. Okay, so many of you are traveling around the world, and I'll try to maybe show how actually your traveling and working abroad can impact taxation. So if let's say that we look at one person who is from the US, and then that person traveled to work from Australia. And after that, after some period of time, now we will not define for how long, that person moved to Croatia. You should think about, okay, where do I have to pay taxes? Do I have to pay this in my home country, in the US, or in Australia, where I spent some time, or do I have to pay taxes in Croatia only, where I'm working right now? So we'll try actually to pass through answer to all of that, even though there is no straightforward answer and everything depends on your situation, your private actually circumstances. But at least I'll try to explain something that will help you to get better understanding of all of that. So I would, for beginning, say there is a potential possibility that you will pay tax in all 3 countries, or maybe even in none. We'll see that. So the first question we need to answer on taxation is, where am I tax resident? Now, where my tax resident is, why is that even important? That's important because in the country of your tax residency, you have to pay tax on your worldwide income. So tax on worldwide income is something that is covering all your income, no matter actually where you sourced it, where you earned it. What did you actually earn it from dividends from one country, or you actually earned it by working in some other country, etc. So that country of tax residency has right to tax your total income. On the other hand, other countries will actually have rights to tax your income which you sourced in that country. So for employment, this could be, country where you actually were working. So where you spend some days of work, this is considered as income being sourced in that country. On the other hand, if you earn dividends from, let's say, Microsoft in the US, so this will be income which is sourced in the US, even though you might be tax resident elsewhere. So it's very, very important for you, first of all, to define in which country, or I will even say in which countries, you are considered as tax resident. So how to define where are you tax residents? So it's not such a straightforward answer, I would say, to that, and it depends on many, many factors. I put on this slide, just some of the general information which should be considered when you're defining where are you considered to be tax resident. So first question is from which country you are coming from, because many countries are taxing their nationals, even though they left their country for a number of years. And I heard, and I'm not US tax advisor, but on the other hand, I heard that US is taxing their nationals for a number of years, and it's very, very hard actually to stop paying taxes if you started paying them there. So then you also have to consider how much you are traveling. Are you traveling, just 6 months per country, or 3 months per country, or you just, were living, whole life in the US, from our example, and then moved, for 3 years to Australia, and now you're living in Croatia. All of that has impact on your tax residency and on taxation. Then it's also important where are you keeping your permanent residence, where you actually registered it, what are your private circumstances, meaning do you have a partner, do you have family, are they joining you on your travel, are they actually waiting for you at home? All of this will be considered by countries when they will determine whether you are considered to be their tax resident. And it also depends on the business structure which you have. Are you, freelancer, having a registered company? Are you employee of a company? So all of that should be considered to determine your tax residency. When we come to Croatian rules, Croatian rules are pretty similar to some, I would say, international rules, global rules on determination of tax residency. And what we are looking at is whether you have residence for living in Croatia. It's not important that you own something. It's only important that it is available to you to live in that property. So if you have a property available for a living for more than 183 days in Croatia, in that situation, you might be considered Croatian tax resident, but some other factors should also be considered. But this is something that can absolutely impact your tax residency. So even rented apartment will count. Then it's also important how many days are you staying in Croatia. All days of stay are actually counted. So it doesn't matter whether you're working during these days, are you on holiday, is this the day of arrival, the day when you left Croatia? It's enough, that you spend 1 hour a day, in Croatia to be considered as your day of stay in Croatia. So if you would stay more than 183 days in Croatia, then you would be considered also Croatian tax resident. I would emphasize here that this number of days of stay in Croatia is very important here for digital nomads and digital nomad visa, which is introduced to Croatia. In Croatia, just because of the fact that digital nomad visa is offering you to stay in Croatia for up to a year, which is more than 183 days. So be careful with all of that, and also take that into consideration, when you're thinking about your taxes. Then Croatia will also look whether you have family. Did your family join you in Croatia? And the third one is fourth one is whether you are considered to be tax resident elsewhere. Why is this important? If other country considers you to be tax resident of that country, Croatia will take that into account, and they will consider all other factors. But if you stay more than 183 days and no other country considers you to be their tax resident, then Croatia will say, yes, you are our tax resident, and yes, you are taxable in Croatia on your worldwide income. So that's why it's important, are you tax resident elsewhere? And the last thing to consider about tax residency is whether Croatia has double tax treaty, which is a bilateral agreement between Croatia and some other country on taxation. If there is a double tax treaty, then we also have to look at provisions of this double tax treaty to determine which country has right to consider you to be their tax resident. And it's great if there is a double tax treaty, because in that situation, you should not be in a position to be considered tax resident of two countries when we apply this double tax treaty. That's why it's great, really, when we have double tax treaties. If you become taxable in Croatia, which means, for example, you are a tax resident or you spend a little bit more time than 183 days, which I mentioned to you, then it would be interesting to you, to know what are taxes that they have to pay. So taxes which you should pay could be, different. All depends on your structure. So it could be personal income tax, for example. If you are employee of a company and earning employment income, then this would be taxed at the rates of 20 and 30%, depending on whether you earn more, less or more than 4,000 euro a month. Then personal income tax rate of 10%, which is the lowest one, is also applicable in Croatia, but only on specific sorts of income like dividends, investment income, and similar. There is also one nice way of taxation for example, for freelancers. I heard that there are some of you, who are freelancers. And if you register your business, not as a company, but like craftsmen, actually register, they actually work. So if you register a business and pay personal income tax and you don't earn so much money, but let's say that you earn less than 39,500 euros per year, then you could pay actually taxes in fixed amount. And this fixed amount depends on level of income which you earn. And taxes range from 200 to 720 euros per year. So this is really nice way of taxation and could be applicable for some of you. For any personal income tax that you pay, you have to also pay city surtax if the place where you registered your habitual abode applies city surtax. So city surtax is from 0 to 18%, but it's not something significant because it's not calculated on income, but actually on the amount of tax that you have to pay. So it doesn't have to be such a huge amount of tax. Some of you have companies, so some of you will be interested or will register companies in Croatia or might register to pay corporate tax in Croatia. Corporate tax is, general tax rate is 18%, and there is, for those who are earning less than 1 million euro per year, tax rate is 10%, which is also not that bad. Of course, when you are extracting money from the company, you have to pay tax on dividends again at 10%, which I mentioned for personal income tax. There are also social taxes. I will not go into too much detail. They can vary, really. You can pay them on income amount, you can pay them in fixed amount, so they can range really a lot. And it really depends on your specific situation. You could also, if you register business, be subject to VAT. VAT registration is required for those who earn more than 39,500 euro a year. And one and the most beautiful way of taxation in Croatia is, of course, to earn income which registered for digital nomad visa, because there is zero tax on that income. And that's actually why we are actually explaining all of this. And it will be really great to see that many of you obtain digital nomad visa, because all income which you will earn based on digital nomad visa will be tax exempt in Croatia. Now, what is Croatian Digital Nomad Visa? Maybe just to explain that, to whom does that apply and what does it mean? Just very short info that this is intended for third country nationals, that employees of non-Croatian companies are those who could obtain a digital nomad visa, or those who do some work for non-Croatian entities. So it's actually that you should not be employed in Croatia, you should not work with Croatian, companies. So you should be globally based, so somehow focused on work with foreign companies, non-Croatian companies. And you should be third country national, which means no European Union, actually extended to European Economic Area. And there are also, you should provide no services to Croatian employers. So why am I mentioning this? Because if you are not actually fulfilling these conditions, even though you are actually living as a digital nomad, it doesn't mean that you will actually obtain this digital nomad visa, and it doesn't mean that your income will be exempt taxation in Croatia. So it's only important that you obtain digital nomad visa, and these are those who can apply to obtain it, and then your income will be tax exempt. Now we are coming back to beginning, of the whole presentation and saying, okay, is there going to be double taxation then, or am I going to pay zero tax? Everything is possible, I would say, and I discussed this with Michael a little bit earlier, regarding taxation and if there could be, zero tax payable. So there could be situations in which you could be requested from different countries to pay tax in these countries. Why? As explained, you could source income from different countries. And if you, for example, earn dividends, I don't know, in the US and Croatia started considering you tax resident, then yes, you could pay tax in both countries. Many countries have ways to avoid double taxation. Croatia is one of them. And we will have, if nothing else, we will give tax credit, which means if you earn some money abroad, we'll give you at least credit for this tax which you paid abroad. And then you will pay tax, extra tax only on this extra income, in Croatia, if any. So this is something that could happen in various situations. And could it happen that you pay zero tax? It could sometimes, yes. Sometimes this is when no country, when you're traveling so often and you're spending so little time, per country, and depending on different systems, which countries have, it could happen really that no country considers you to be their tax resident. But I would emphasize here that such people are really rare. Maybe you think that you're traveling enough. It should be really, really short period. It should be very, very careful with considering that you're really not considered as tax resident, and especially because I mentioned to you, for example, that Croatia has also one mechanism saying that in their tax legislation saying, look, guys, if you are not considered tax resident elsewhere, we might consider you if you fulfill any of these conditions, for tax residency. So be very, very careful with thinking, okay, I'm safe, I'm traveling enough. Maybe you are not. And maybe coming back to how we started, actually, is to go back to these quotes and saying, I would say that even though, yes, generally people are paying tax, and governments are really, finding different ways to collect taxes from your income, I think that Croatia has done great thing, and introduction of digital nomad visa and changes of tax legislation, which allows you actually to pay zero tax on this income, which is based on this digital nomad visa, have made it, actually Croatian government gave it the best thing. They said, as we said, the best things in life are tax-free. So Croatia gave it the best things in life. You can come here to Croatia and earn your income tax-free. Michael,
thank you, Christina. We're going to go now to the panel. To go online. So anyone who's watching online, feel free to send in some questions. I'm just going to take this so I can see those questions coming in. And we also had some questions submitted before today. So I'll just move over to those now. So you mentioned tax treaties with countries. Are there any countries, say, where we might see a significant amount of digital nomads coming from who don't have these tax treaties?
Yeah, Croatia has really a lot of tax treaties signed, something around 60, 66, if I correctly remember. But some of the main countries with which Croatia has no treaty are for sure US and Australia. So with US, unfortunately, there is still no work on signing of treaty. However, with the United States, we are already in the process. Process was for a number of years really on hold. But during the last 2 years, this was all, activated, and we expect even some actual, signing maybe even by the end of this year. So it is in final phase, but taking into consideration that it takes some time, to be in a position to apply the treaty. But I think that this is going to be one of really important treaties, for U.S. citizens to come to Croatia.
Excellent, good. That's good news, yeah, because we have a fair few U.S. people asking about that. So, and then so this brings me to the next question about the US, the UK, and Australia. What are the tax implications for each country at the moment? So you touched on that briefly, but
Well, with UK, we actually have double tax treaty. This is the second double tax treaty which we signed with them, but for others we still don't have, as I just mentioned. So for those where we don't have any double tax treaty, we will just look at our legislation. So we will actually tax all income which someone coming to Croatia is earning, unless digital nomad visa is obtained, and this will be exempt. On the other hand, if someone is from the UK and considered as being, UK tax resident, in that situation, yes, you might apply, some provisions, to avoid double taxation easier than if you are, if there is no double tax treaty.
Okay.
Local taxation will be, same for all of them. So if we determine that someone is taxable in Croatia, we will tax that person based on our local laws. This is actually something that I mentioned earlier in the presentation when I just show you some kind of, comparison of different rates. So this is something that will be applicable on all of them, irrespective of from where they're coming from.
Okay, cool. And we just also had someone adding another country to that list. If you know anything about Nigeria precisely. It's a very precise question.
Nigeria, I don't know anything precisely. I can check. I prepare just a list of double tax treaties just to check. And unfortunately, we have no treaty with Nigeria, and I'm not aware that there is one in the process of signing.
Okay, perfect. Good. Thanks for that. The next question is, if you're a Croatian tax resident, but you're employed in a company abroad, what are the implications there? So, for example, if you're employed by a UK company, but you've spent 190 days here.
Yeah. Well, employees of foreign companies who are spending more than 183 days in Croatia, I would say, are for sure taxable on that income which relates to Croatian work days, at least that part. It could happen that they are taxable on their full employment income. All depends on their private situation. So we should really, look into further detail, to comment on that. It could also happen that these individuals are paying tax in their home country, actually meaning in the country of employment. And Social Security should also be considered here, how to arrange that, especially taking into consideration, you mentioned UK, Brexit, and whether they were in Croatia at the time of Brexit, or they, moved to Croatia after 1st of January 2021. So we should be very, very careful with all of that. This might be very, very complex. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I guess in that case, when we're thinking about digital nomads, quite often they work for a foreign company, and that would be then for the foreign company to find out about that in terms of their own contributions as a corporation.
When you earn, that's a really good question, and I didn't mention that earlier. When you're in Croatia, earn money from abroad, you are personally obliged to register for taxes and pay taxes in Croatia. So it's not the company which is considered as being, liable to do all of that. Only when we come to Social Security, this might be different, but only for EU companies. Now, with the UK, it's now a complex situation depending when you move to Croatia, because if you moved before 1st of January 2021, then you might even be in a position, to apply some of the EU regulation rules on social insurance, which means that UK companies might be obliged to register in Croatia and pay Social Security, for you. On the other hand, if you moved after in 2021, then you would be again as an individual obliged to pay Social Security in Croatia.
Good. Yeah, we were discussing before all of this fun with Brexit, so no comment. You mentioned a bit about tax resident, and there are a few questions about what is it exactly, which I think you shared, and then what are the implications for both. So first of all, for EU citizens. Does it really make a difference where you're tax resident as an EU citizen in Croatia?
Well, it makes from the perspective of which country has to allow you, has to make sure, that you are not double taxed. So Croatia has, double tax treaties with, I think, most countries of the EU. So why is it important to determine where you are tax resident? Because that country will tax your worldwide income. And that country, which will do that, has to ensure that it will take into consideration taxes which you paid in other countries. So, yes, it is important to determine, first of all, where are you tax resident, and to know where you have to pay tax on your total income, and then to see how to avoid this double taxation.
Okay.
I guess that none of us would like to pay double tax themselves.
So that applies to both EU and non-EU citizens equally?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Moving to a few kind of more local questions. So this question comes in, as you mentioned, digital nomads, they could be people who are solely earning outside of Croatia, but there could be some that are also in Croatia, as you said. So what is the most tax-effective option for paying yourself as a sole director? So is it salary? Is it dividend? Because obviously there are different rules, laws, and contributions.
Okay, this is now a complex question, considering that this is also some kind of mixture of legal and tax matters, I would say. So maybe just first info, in Croatia, you can be a director of a company without having employment relationship. So you can have management contract, and you can choose whether this management contract will have this employment element. So you could be, just director, let's say that way. Now, how you will tax that and what will be most tax efficient, it really depends on the different structure. But you mentioned, okay, maybe dividends might be, something that could be, considered as the cheapest way of taxation. So owners of companies who are, registered as directors might prefer, to get their payout through dividends, So in Croatia, you're not obliged as a director to receive some kind of remuneration for your directorship. And on the other hand, dividends are taxed at a rate of 10% plus this small city surtax, so max up to 12%, and no social security payable on dividends. As a director, of course, don't forget you have to pay some social security if you are not. So I would expect something like 450 euro of social security being payable here. But just when we look at taxation, I would say dividends might be really then the cheapest way. But there is really no straightforward answer, so better really to consider each situation. So
yeah, because there's also the Croatian laws that come into play on business and also on your residency status here as either an EU or non-EU national. So yeah, a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
How often do you have to report and pay taxes in Croatia? I know it depends on your kind of legal status, but generally.
Generally, depends. Generally, but still depends on what kind of tax are you paying. You know, so generally. Corporate taxes are payable, monthly, VAT is payable monthly and similar. On the other hand, personal taxes can be payable, within different number of days, from the income receipt, which could be from 8 days to 1 month to even to the end of the year, meaning actually based on the tax assessment which you will receive the next year from the authorities. It all depends, on what you actually earn and what's your structure.
Okay, so more research needed. Yeah. And do you need an accountant for doing tax returns in Croatia?
Well, I would absolutely recommend that, especially for digital nomads who are not aware of Croatian legislation. So there is a lot of different, ways to structure your work and stay in Croatia. And you're also coming with some sort of structure when you're actually moving to Croatia. So this should be really carefully considered. If you have a company, I absolutely recommend to have Croatian accountants to help you with local rules. For these accountants, I would recommend, of course, that they speak English, but also to have some understanding of international structures, transactions, and international taxation. So this is something without what you could, really end up being twice taxable. So be careful with that.
Okay. And just before we go on to some more business-related questions, regarding tax residency. Can you opt in straight away to be a tax resident, or do you have to wait so many days?
You can request, to determine a tax residency. You can actually say what you expect to spend in Croatia, but final confirmation will be, after we really see what was your actual stay. These days, many travel plans, have to change because of this COVID situation. So we never know, what will happen, and this intended situation sometimes change. So tax residency is usually determined based on actual days of stay, and these days of stay are really important, as you have heard, earlier, that these 183 days should be counted. So we have to be really careful with all of that.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to some business related questions now before we come to some other questions we've got online.
Maybe just to add here, some countries have different approach with this residency. If you determine that you are tax resident or that you are taxable in Croatia, even though that will happen, after this half a year, this 183 days, you will be taxable from day one. So, just not to think, okay, I'll have to start paying taxes after, 183 days. No, you're taxed from first day.
Backdated. It's very important to know.
Yep.
A few business-related questions. First of all, in Croatia, do you need to have a company to do freelance work?
Mm-hmm. Freelance. Well, freelancers can actually do their work. Now everything depends on what they are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, there is no requirement to register a company to do freelance work. You can do it maybe based on work on contract, something like that. But everything will depend on what you do. Sometimes you will be, but this is now a more legal question.
Yeah.
And say, you might be, obliged to register a company, some kind of business in Croatia.
Cool. And so if you have a business in Croatia already, and then you decide you want to do some consultancy work, can you do that through that business that you already have in Croatia?
Well, I would say that it all depends on what you are registered for. Not you, but your company is registered for. So if company is registered for one type of business, and now you are actually adding some extra, type of activity. If this is really something just one-off and very small, I understood from my legal colleagues, which I have heard, that you don't have to register that additional activity. However, if you're going to really provide these services, additional, line of services, then yes, you would need to expand your registration at the court register, to register that additional activity. And then yes, you can do it to that company. Yeah.
Perfect. And can you open a business in Croatia without you having a fixed address? So the person doesn't have a fixed address. Can you register a business?
Okay, company has to register, have a registered address, but person as such, I'm not sure, to be honest, whether this is something that is required for owner of a company to have registered address in Croatia. Yeah, but this is again more legal. I would have to really check with my colleagues from legal department to know what would be required.
And with KPMG, in terms of offering kind of support with opening a business or that kind of stuff, do you offer that kind of address or whatever for people that are moving around?
Well, we are offering to companies because as a company, in order to register a company in Croatia, you need to have fixed address. But this could be, address of your accountant, like KPMG. We are actually offering to our clients, to register their address at KPMG Croatia address, and then they can use it as a mailbox. So this is possible, absolutely.
We have one very specific question right now. So, an American with an Estonian company in Croatia, any tax?
And spending a lot of time in Croatia?
Potentially. I know it's a very specific one, but if you can share anything.
Yeah. Well, of course, to answer that, I would need to understand, where the individual, how much is individual spending time in Croatia. If individual would be, now we miss, the whole structure to understand whether what type of income he's earning from company. But let's assume some types of income. If just owner and earning dividend. In that situation, the dividend I would expect will be taxable in Estonia. And on the other hand, if the individual is Croatian tax resident, then yes, he should report it and pay tax on excess tax, if any, on this dividend income. This is payable the next year for the previous year. So this is something that could be, case for the individual. But this is not the only, tax matter to consider here. If you have company abroad, you also have to think, okay, is he employed with that company? If he's earning income, employment income, this should also be reported. So now, is he earning some directorship fees? So we have to see, what is the actual structure, what actual income he's earning to actually advise on what he needs to do. And one more point here is not important only the individual, it's also important company. We didn't mention that, but it also could happen, that you're living and staying, in Croatia and working for that company, which is, established in Estonia. And by doing that, you're actually managing that company from Croatia. You are maybe signing contracts or agreeing terms of, of the contract with your customers. All of that is considered as something that could lead to potential taxable position for your company, which even though is established in Estonia, might create taxable permanent establishment in Croatia, which means some of its income could become taxable in Croatia. Now, this is something that is hard to expect. It should be really checked, whether this is created. And it's also advisable to check, if you really doubt that this could have happened, to check that with Croatian authorities. There is a questionnaire which you can complete and then ask them to confirm the situation.
Okay.
Doesn't have to mean that it will happen, but just be careful with all that what you are doing, this is not something specific for Croatia. This is something that is applicable, this permanent establishment for companies worldwide. So,
okay. Another specific question from Christy. So does the double taxation treaty with the US relate to the $90,000 income exemption? For example, if someone makes $100,000 income, are they just double taxed on the $10,000 above that 90,000?
Okay, now double taxation treaty with the US is still not publicly available, so I don't know what's going to be written in it. Croatia has signed treaties. I can comment based on these treaties which were signed up to now, even though this treaty will be different because US is signing treaties based on UN rules and Croatia was signing up to now based on OECD rules. Now, too much technical details, but okay. So we expect some differences, but let's comment maybe from the perspective of what we already have here in Croatia, these treaties, how this avoidance of double taxation and this credit method functions is, let's say you earned, what you said, 100,000?
100,000. Yeah.
100,000. And then let's say you pay 20,000 of tax in the US. We in Croatia will say, okay, you are now also our tax resident. Then we will tax this 100. And since you earned this 100 in the US, we determine that your tax liability is 30, but you already paid 20 in the US. We will deduct this 20 from 30, and you have to pay additional tax of 10 in Croatia. So it's actually credit of tax, not of income. It's not looking at income.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so more to think about. To think about. And if to say you are here in Croatia and you want to find out more about tax, where are all the places you can go? And you mentioned this form that you could fill out with the tax authority.
Yeah.
Where are the best places to kind of get information?
Yeah, you can for sure go to the tax authorities and ask them for their advice. Now it's very hard, at smaller tax authorities offices to get proper information, because they're more dealing with local tax matters. So these are more questions for central office of tax authorities. But of course, you can also ask some of international tax advisors like KPMG. So I would absolutely recommend contact me and contact KPMG, of course, to help you with your questions.
Excellent, perfect. Christy says thank you. That makes sense. Your
Great,
answer,
thanks,
so
Christy.
excellent for that.
Great to hear.
We'll just see if there are any more questions coming in online. I'll get those sent through now. So if you do have any questions and you're watching online, feel free to send them through. I can't unfortunately see the stream, but I can see your questions. So send them through now. I'll let you have a sip of water so you can get prepared for any future questions. We mentioned earlier about the two types of digital nomads. The digital nomads that are not doing anything with Croatian companies, and therefore they can apply for a digital nomad permit and come here tax-free, essentially.
Correct.
We'll be talking tomorrow about policy, so I don't want to talk about that. But with the way things are currently in the permit, would you say there's any kind of other benefits that kind of those digital nomads that come with that permit get in terms of tax? Like it's completely tax-free? Are there any other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I didn't touch upon that part. During the presentation, there is a lot of information actually to cover. And what I wanted to read the presentation was just to provide some general information. So it's great actually that you ask about that. So even those digital nomads who can and have obtained digital nomad visa. Yes, they are exempt from paying tax on this income based on which they obtain this visa. So let's say that this US person who we actually mentioned at the beginning of the whole story moved to Croatia and is earning, employment income based on employment with US company. And based on that employment, this person obtained digital nomad visa in Croatia. That income will be tax exempt in Croatia. That's clear. However, let's say that this person rented an apartment in the US where she was living, while she was living in the US and is receiving some rental income. Let's assume she also received some dividends from, I don't know, Australia, wherever, So all this other income, which is not covered by digital nomad visa, based on current legislation setup, will be taxable in Croatia. So let's just be very, very careful. What is that? What is tax exempt? I think it is great to what has already been done. And this is really great release, not just to be tax exempt, but you also don't have obligation to submit any tax forms for that income which is tax exempt. So it's really released from administrative perspective and from financial perspective. But just be very, very careful. If you are earning some other money, some other income which is not covered by the visa, it is also reportable. It could be reportable in Croatia.
So my idea of cryptocurrency scheme.
Yeah, cryptocurrency is taxable in Croatia. So if you're considered tax resident. Yeah.
Perfect. One other question online. For an entrepreneur coming as a digital nomad, would they be taxed as the individual or the company?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
It could be both, actually. If a company, not sure if I correctly understand, company is abroad or...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, company abroad. I would expect that at first instance, individual would be taxable and its income if certain conditions are met, that Croatia has rights to tax that income. On the other hand, as I mentioned to the individual from the US, with an Estonian company, it could happen that that company might also become taxable in Croatia. But this is something that is happening really exceptionally, it's really rare. And it's not something that I would automatically, comment for the company. This should be really carefully considered if there would be any tax liability for the company. So I would first say individuals will be taxed on the income they earn from that company or on some other basis.
Okay, that was Uchenna. Thank you for that for those questions, actually. And we have another question from Ron. With the digital nomad visa, does that tax protection extend to the foreign company operated by a digital nomad? So similar.
Yeah, and there is no exemption, unfortunately, for a foreign company for now. We are actually hoping that, we should take into consideration that this is the first year of digital nomad visa application and of this all new tax rules. So we would expect that there will be some developments because all this legislation is very new. So for now, there is no exemption for the company, but it would be really great, to have that exemption as well. It will much help, to the digital nomads. So with companies abroad, to come, easier to Croatia without thinking, will I complicate situation for my company abroad? So this is really, really something that is a great question, and it would be great to be resolved in Croatia.
Excellent. Well, you've got some hours with a few of the key players in the digital nomad permit to discuss this before tomorrow, because it might be brought up again.
Okay.
And a further question from Christy. Would you recommend remote workers pay for a tax consultation with both an expert in their home country, the country of tax residency, and an expert in the country you're working remotely in? And if so, what would that meeting look like?
Okay. Christy is really great. Christy has great questions. So when you are actually contacting advisor in Croatia, you will get advice on Croatian taxes. So I'm not US tax advisor, for example, but I have colleagues, of course, from KPMG US who are able to help me to understand what would be US tax position, on that person's, tax situation. And then we can combine that and see what would be effects, for both countries. So these meetings could be, you could have your advisor in the US and one advisor in Croatia. But it would be much better maybe if and we are also at KPMG arrange that kind of meetings where we sit all together, or actually virtually sit, and discuss the situation from all sides, to see what would be, situation and how to make this as the best possible position for the individual to take all the everything in consideration.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have online
Excellent.
now. So thank you very much for today. It's been very informative. As we've heard, there's so much to think about with this stuff, both tax and legal as well. But it's great to have that overview and food for thought going forward. So thank you very much for your time as always.
Thank you also, Michael, once again for inviting me. I hope that I didn't actually kill you with all this tax information. So try to make it as easy as possible.
Definitely not. Very clear.
Excellent.
Oh, cool, excellent. I just got a thumbs up. We've just got somebody just snuck in with a question.
Uh-huh.
So, how would KPMG work with different accounting firms in other countries?
We also cooperate with other tax advisors. Of course, that some of our clients do already have their tax advisors, which is also recommended for all of them. Whoever is traveling, it's really important that you have safe situation, let's say, from home. So we already cooperate and we are cooperating with other tax advisors and other accountants, who could actually then provide information on taxation in their home country. So happy to do so.
Excellent. Everything's available. We've got a few things. A huge thank you from people online. Amazing
Excellent.
session.
Thanks
Thank you
very
for
much,
everything.
everybody.
Round of applause.
Thanks.
So we're 3 hours away from happy hour, but does it have to wait? No, we can start happy hour whenever. That's what we're going to be doing later on today. Feel free to come and join us here at Swanky Monkey. Where is the monkey? Hostel. And tomorrow we have got an amazing day lined up. We have got interactive sessions, and to tell you more about that, I'm going to bring Tanya onto the stage. Oh, yeah. Over to you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for your attention and for not drinking my mojito because I left it on the table. We do have an amazing lineup for tomorrow. It's our big day. I mean, they've been some very big days, but this is 9 till 2:30. We'll start off with an introduction to destinations, so regenerative and sustainable tourism destinations with our moderator, Ron Tardif. Our second panel will be moderated by yours truly with a panel looking at the future of work. And our third panel features Michael Free here as a moderator looking at DNA Croatia. I think we have a banner right behind me. Christina's back on again. So looking at Croatia's global standing policy and the businesses that are getting behind making the permit and all other requirements for digital nomads happen. We also have a happy hour tomorrow after everything is over. But more importantly, we're announcing the first winner of the Zagreb Digital Nomad Ambassador Project at the end of the day. So you have to stay tuned to watch the whole day. And so we have happy hour and a dinner for those of you in Zagreb on Jarun. So we're exploring the city. And we also have the weekend program, which we'll be announcing on that day too. So enjoy and hope to see you at happy hour, or if you're joining virtually, have a toast because it's quite hot here. Thank you.